Academy of Science concluded a study by the Chinese Human Genome Diversity Project and made public their findings, which stated that most population of modern China, one-fifth of all the people living today, owes its genetic origins to Africa. The study was the result of a consortium of several leading research groups in the People's Republic of China in combination with the Human Genetics Center at the University of Texas Health Center in Houston, Texas. In addition to genetic evidence linking China to Africa, archaeological evidence has recorded close to 100 pyramids that are located in a 100-kilometer area around the city of Xi in central China.
It's about 9 a.m. on a Thursday, and in the next few minutes, around $22,000 deposited in. And the reason that I know that is because that's exactly what's happened and exactly what's happened for almost every single day for the past 3 years. And if you don't believe me, you can look on my screen right now and you can see every single day around $22,000 are being debited into my bank account. And the truth is, I'm a small group of people who are experiencing the exact same thing. Just a few hours of their time, they're getting $22,000 deposited into their bank account every single day. In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what that thing is and how you may be able to do the same thing yourself. And just so we can get it out of the way early, this has nothing to do with selling crap products on Amazon or starting a coaching or consulting business, creating a social media marketing agency.
I can't help but wonder, why are these pyramids shrouded in mystery? What are they hiding? This site is also well known as the location of the famous life-size terracotta warriors. Further study of this history and art of the Shang and the Zhou dynasties in China will reveal even more African influence. This information and evidence points to a clear interaction and anthropological connection to China's African roots.
China's first dynasty and emperor were Africoid, or of black origins. Founded by King Te, the earliest documented rulership in China was the Shang or the Xiang dynasty. The Shang were credited with unifying China's earliest elements to form their first civilization. The Shang were given Naki, Na, and Qi, meaning man. The first Chinese emperor, the legendary Fuxi, was a woolly-haired black man. Among his credits, establishing government and originating social institutions, as well as cultural inventions. He is said to be the originator of the I Ching, the Book of Change. It is among the oldest and most revered system of philosophy. Emperor Hung Wu was founder of the Great Ming Dynasty of China. He was African, Sudanese, and Mongolian descent and was also a Muslim. The skills that set the foundation for Shaolin Kung Fu descend from India and Africoid origins. Even in the White Garment Hall of the Shaolin Hunan province of China, there are 12-foot-long paintings of Chinese and Africoid Shaolin monks training boxing skills together. Although not promoted and somewhat hidden, it shows striking evidence of deep interrelation of Africa, the martial arts, and Asia. There have been efforts made, even the original Chinese, called Li Min, and the Ainu of Japan, Africans. Also, there are books written to prove this fact.
Such as The African Presence in Asia, authors Dr. Ivan van Sertima and Runoko Rashidi, and Presence in the Early East by Runoko Rashidi, and there are many others.
China's first dynasty and emperor, founded by King Tang, who was black. The earliest documented rulership of China was the Shang dynasty from 1500 to 1008 BC, which is credited with bringing together the elements of China's earliest civilization. The Shang was given the name Naki under the black. The Black Chinese established the basic form of graceful calligraphy that has lasted to the present day. The first Chinese emperor, the legendary Fuhis, was without a doubt black, and his African brothers and sisters established government, social institutions, and cultural inventions. They are credited with the creation of the I Ching, or the Book of Change, which is the oldest, most revered system of prophecy. It is known to have influenced the most distinguished philosophers of Chinese thought. And offspring were responsible for the building of China's earth pyramids, which are today mistaken for hills due to their appearance size. The pyramids in Japan are not made of stone indigenous to Japan. It is said that small black people built them during the Mu civilization. We know that the pyramids around the world were all built by black people, as no other people have a history of building pyramids, judging by the contents of all the pyramids.
There are people who will dispute this fact. However, I challenge anyone to take a good, honest look at the contents of the pyramids throughout the world and find out who the builders of the pyramids are based on the contents of the pyramids. And you will find that they are inevitably black people. And there are also people who try to reduce our content as being racist. This is not true. As a matter of fact, it's far from the truth. What we are truth tellers. We challenge anybody to research any of the videos and any of the information that we find, and you will see that we are not racist at all. We are simply telling the truth about our people, telling our truth, our story.
If you're a woman over 40 and you want to lose belly fat, stop doing endless workouts. Want to know why those crazy workouts and fad eating plans aren't working long term? Because they don't fix the root cause of your problems. So
We'd also like to point out that in a genetic study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Genetics, scientists found evidence that the first Africans arrived in China around 60,000 years ago. Population researcher and geneticist Li Jin said, "Our work shows that modern people came to Southeast Asia and then moved to northern China. This supports the idea that modern people came from Africa. In later ages, they were responsible in 210 for constructing an elaborate tomb for Shen Shi Hujuan. His body is guarded by an army of soldiers, warriors made out of the terracotta. They are also credited with building the Great Wall of China." That's right, folks. Black people had a very big hand in the building of the Great Wall of China. This is very interesting because this is a little known fact. I repeat, there is strong evidence that the Great Wall of China was built by black people. There is also evidence of a substantial population of blacks in early China. Archaeological studies have located an infrastructure which was inhabited by blacks in early Chinese history, and reports of major kingdoms ruled by blacks are frequent in Chinese documents. In the earliest Chinese history, several texts in classical books spoke of these diminutive blacks. The Toruli, composed under the dynasty of Tivu, 1122 to 249 BC, give description of the inhabitants with black features. Chinese folklore speak often of these blacks and mention an emperor of Chinese named Li, 373 to 397. He was companion of the emperor Xiao Wenwei, who is spoken of as being black African. and the Kingdom of Blacks in the southwest of China. Chinese folklore speak often of these blacks and mention an emperor of Chinese named Li, companion of the emperor Shaw Wen of Wei, who was spoken of being black African, and the Kingdom of Blacks in the southwest of China. The sacred Manchu shows a great multitude of black people. Emperor Po Yi of the Manchu Kawa of the Manchu ruler of China is most distinctly black. Chinese Chronicle reports that a black existed in the south of China at the beginning of the country's history. So you see, folks, black people were the beginning. Origin of civilization, the ancient black royal house of China, 1766, 1100 BC, called the Shang, contributed mightily to China's earliest known civilization. Now, this history is a little known fact in Black history. The fact that Black people were at the very beginning of the Chinese Empire lets us know that we have a history that is unexplored and that is many times, unfortunately, hidden from us. The truth of the matter is, we don't need to take a backseat to anybody, because oftentimes you will find that we were there at the very beginning of the establishments of great, great civilizations. The Black X and Abundance channel, where Black history is every day. Thanks for watching, and please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And never forget that thou art rich.
So you guys know for the past 2 months, I've been trying to get this information to you about tying the Tirthankara into us, tying the Asian history. So a couple of these videos from my old page I'm playing, you guys, and we'll discuss some more of this in a bit.
When you read the European philosophers, what did they say? They often said that Africa had two great civilizations, Egypt in the north and Asia in the south. The white man said this. They often, in ancient times, Asia was considered a part of Africa or Africa's second civilization. They said that you go to Asia and there's nothing but a carbon copy of Africa because it was settled by the Africans.
A lot of people don't know that there are pyramids all over Asia, and there are pyramids in China. In Japan, they have an underwater pyramid that a lot of people don't know about. And you can go there now, and that's one of those ancient mysteries. But again, pyramids are all over the planet.
So in Asia today, you have pockets of black people. You have the Mani. You have in southern Thailand. You have a related group in northern Malaysia, sometimes called Sakai, S-E-K-I. You have the Andaman Islanders groups. One group is called the Onge, O-N-G-E, or O-N-J-E. I think it's O-N-G-E. And another is called the Jawara, J-A-R-A-W-A. And then you have black populations in the Philippines, sometimes called Negritos or Eta, or I think we should call them Acta, which just means the people. You have a tradition of a similar group in Thailand. These are the diminutive Africoids. These are the small blacks, similar in many ways to the Twa or so-called Pygmies in Central Africa. These are very, very ancient people who left Africa perhaps 60, 70, maybe 100,000 years ago and became isolated.
The Padang people, that's a group of people in Asia, and the women have these rings that they wear on their necks that's identical to an African tribe in East Africa who wear the same type of rings on their necks. So this just shows that the African-Asian connection is still there. They still carry on some of the African cultures and traditions in certain parts of Asia.
I once had a professor of mine working on my doctorate tell me that she went to Japan and they went into the mountains of Japan. Now, this isn't a conscious woman by most definitions, but she couldn't wait to come back and tell me this. She said, Umar, I was in Japan. We went up into the spiritual temples of Japan, and we sat down in one of the temples waiting for the priest to come out and teach us a little bit about what they believe and what they stand for. She said, Umar, they walked out of the temples and their skin was just as black as ours. They had gray afros because they were elders. That she said the phenotype looked like the modern Asian, but she said the skin was black and they had gray afros, hair up on top like Don King. And she said it totally overcame me. They sat down and they began to talk. And she said, I couldn't believe these were black men. They were Japanese, but they were black men.
When I went over to Indonesia, I went there at night and I would see billboards of very light-skinned Asian Indonesian people. And then when I went to my hotel, I would go and watch these movies and I would see these very, again, light-skinned, pale-skinned Indonesian Asian people. But the next day when I went out to Indonesia, everybody was either my color or darker. I didn't see one person who looked like these people that were on the billboards and on television. So they would pick and choose and get the whitest looking Asian people to promote in the media over there. And when I walked around Indonesia, I saw people like jet black, dark. I ran into a couple of people with afros. I saw one Asian brother, full-blooded Asian guy with an afro, and I had to stop him. I said, brother, where are you from? And the brother was like, I'm from here, right here in Indonesia. So that African presence, that African phenotype is still throughout Asia to this day.
Look at the Buddha's hair. No Chinese person's hair. The Buddha has knotty hair. Every time you see the Buddha, his hair is knotted. Just a thought.
There's a painting called the Nambam painting of the Portuguese when they first go over to Japan. And when you look at this painting, the painting was made in around sometime in the 1500s, and it was the first eyewitness account of what they saw. Many of the Asian people there were dark-skinned, and half the people who were supposed to be Portuguese were dark-skinned.
There's a tradition begun by a man named Alexander Francis Chamberlain, at least in April 1914, in a publication called the Journal of Race Development. And I can quote him almost exactly. And he says, and even in far-off Japan, we can find traces of the ancient Negro. For when the Japanese armies in the 8th century, now here I'm paraphrasing, when the Japanese armies in the 8th century were fighting their traditional enemy, the Ainu, they were led by a famous Negro general named Sakanoye Tamura, and this man became the first shogun in Japanese history.
Also in Malaysia, when I went down to Malaysia, I went into the rainforest over there. And it's very difficult to get over to some of these spots. Some of these people there are very secluded. And because they're secluded, they were able to avoid many natural disasters, and they were also able to avoid invasions. So they didn't mix in with some of the invading forces. So they kept their same African type. There's a tribe called the Batek tribe. And they're an African tribe. If you go there, they have African nose, lips, everything about these people looks like an African tribe.
One of the things we know about white supremacy and light skin supremacy, because even when you look at Asia, even when you go to East India, they practice racism. Why? Because all of these places were colonized by the European and their culture infected the people. So one of the things that they do is they also have a tendency to do what? Hide the darker brother.
As a matter of fact, there was an incident that happened with Miss Fiji. They had the Miss World competition, and they chose this woman to be Miss Fiji. And Miss Fiji has more Europeanized features. And the people of Fiji spoke out against her. they weren't really trying to hate on her, but they said, look, this woman doesn't represent us. She doesn't look like us. She doesn't have our nose. She doesn't have our hair. And we're very proud of what we look like. And we want somebody to represent us, because again, they were trying to use that Europeanized Miss Fiji to bring in tourism and not scare away tourists. But people spoke out against her. And this just shows that many people around the world, they're proud of their Africoid features. One of the oldest groups of people to inhabit were a group of black-skinned people called the Dravidians, or the Untouchables. Now, when people think about the history and the culture of India, they oftentimes think of Mahatma Gandhi. And many people give praises and accolades to Mahatma Gandhi because of Dr. Martin Luther King. But what many people do not know is that Gandhi had very racist views towards black people.
The truth behind Mahatma Gandhi. First of all, I'm reluctant to use the word Mahatma. Mahatma means soul. And many of my Indian colleagues would say he wasn't even an ordinary soul, much less a great soul.
The late, great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. put that picture of Mahatma Gandhi up in his office and said that he got for nonviolence from Mahatma Gandhi. It was somewhat premature for the ancestor, who's one of my favorites, but it was premature because now you automatically set the stage where African people would start looking to Mahatma Gandhi also. For example, last spring, last Black History Month, I was in Atlanta. I went to the Dr. Martin Luther King Shrine where he and Queen Mother Coretta are buried, and across the street is a museum. Outside the museum is a life-size statue of Mahatma Gandhi. Museum to the honor of Dr. King. But there's no statue of Dr. King outside of a museum erected in his honor. Instead, you have a life-size statue of Mahatma Gandhi. So the message to the child is what? That it was really Mahatma Gandhi who's responsible for you coming through the civil rights struggle, not Dr. King. Now, had Dr. King knew Mahatma Gandhi's true racist thinking and ideology, I'm sure he would have thought otherwise. As a psychologist, you can never know what's really at the root of somebody's thinking. I would argue that we should never make a hero of any other people. Mahatma Gandhi turned his back on Africans. Even when he came back to India and began fighting, he refused to give support to the African emancipation movements. And on more than one occasion, he had made derogatory remarks about Africans. And we also know the Dravidians of India, the Africans of India who are oppressed, were oppressed, and have always been oppressed in India. There is no record anywhere of Mahatma Gandhi fighting against the oppression of Indians in India who were black, the so-called Dravidians. Why didn't he speak out for them? Why didn't he speak out for Africans who were fighting against colonialism? Why didn't Mahatma Gandhi help our brothers and sisters in South Africa? It's because he was a racist like the rest of them.
First, Australia itself is the world's second smallest continent, second only after Antarctica. It's the smallest inhabited continent. The name Australia means Great South Land. And the first people of Australia were the people we call Aboriginal Australians, commonly called blackfellas. And of course, different names, the Koori, the Guri, the Noongar, and various names.
The people of Australia, originally Australia was an African land. In fact, in European documentation, they considered it an African satellite. When the British came into Australia and began the mass extermination of African people, they were crystal clear who they were exterminating because they said it. And also we know that right off the coast of Australia was an island called Tasmania, a little island off the coast of Tasmania. There are no living Tasmanians in existence right now. You can't find a Tasmanian man, woman, or child because the British systematically exterminated the entire population.
It wasn't until January 1967 that Aboriginal people in Australia were considered humans for the first time. In January 1967, there was a national referendum to decide if Aboriginal Australians should have Australian citizenship. Up to that point, they were officially and you can document this, classify it as flora and fauna and plants and animals.
In Australia, they would literally breed the melanin of the people. You know, they would have these, they would take the children and take them to breeding camps and breeding farms and breed the darker ones and the mulatto ones white, and they would literally breed the melanin out of these people. The movie Rabbit Proof Fence is about that breeding process, them breeding out the melanin of the Aboriginal people. So it's very deep what was going on over there.
You have three major island chains: North Pacific, West Pacific, and South Pacific. Melanesia, Polynesia, Micronesia. Melanesia is the South Pacific. That means the Black Islands. And the biggest island is New Guinea. Others include New Caledonia, New Ireland, New Britain, Fiji, the Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, which used to be known as New Hebrides. These are the Black Islands. And the people that I've encountered in this part of the world tend to say they come from Africa. People tend to have very, very Africoid features: dark skin, tightly curled hair, you know, large afros, we call them today. Many of them say they come from Africa, especially in Fiji and also in Buka Island. I ask people, where do you come from? We come from Africa. And they're very matter of fact about it. Buka, B-U-K, means black skin. And they have the reputation of being the blackest human beings on earth. So quite naturally, that was where I wanted to my head. If you look at images of King Kamehameha, and I know you have, who is what might be considered the founder of Hawaii. It's like the founding father of Hawaii, clearly Africa.
One of the most famous Hawaiians is a guy named Duke Kahanamoku. Duke was one of the forefathers of modern surfing, and they would use Duke to promote tourism in Hawaii. They would send Duke to the continental United States to promote swimming in Hawaii and surfing, and Duke had problems getting into swimming areas when he came to the continental US because people thought that he was black because he was so dark. And many of the native Hawaiians, they have that dark African phenotype. If you go to places like Maui and some of the remote areas of Hawaii, they look like black people, just like Samoans. You go to Samoa, they look like black people over here in America.
I'm doing an interview, a call-in thing, and some caller says, you know, I'm a Hawaiian. And he says, the problem was you just didn't meet the right people. I said, really? He says, when I was a young boy, my grandmother told me, the Hawaiian Islands, this is around 1815, that he ran into trouble and he sent back to Africa for reinforcements. He said that was a Hawaiian tradition. Now, what I like to do now is to move directly from Africa itself and begin to examine the African presence around the world.
The Kalahari Desert, Namibia. I'm here to find an extraordinary ancient tribe of people, the San Bushmen. Our research shows that their distant relatives left Africa and set in motion the family tree of mankind. From them stemmed every color, creed, and nationality alive today. Everything predicted in their blood seems to be written in their faces. It's like looking at a composite model of every face from around the world. The eye shape of East Asians, the high cheekbones of Mongolians, the mid-brown skin that could turn darker or lighter.
So the San, also called Bushmen. And these are very ancient people whose history in Southern Africa is perhaps 40,000 years old or more, probably older than that. I would suspect more like 100,000 years. And now 10 or 15 years ago, showing this image, I would have said that that they look like East Asians, like Chinese, like Koreans, etc. But now I would say that East Asians look like them. And there's a good reason for that, because these folk like this are the original people of Africa and Asia, or at least very ancient people. And then we see something very similar with this San woman right here. And this is interesting because it shows that not all Black people are dark. Some Black people are naturally light-skinned. It has nothing to do with racial intermingling. Again, we're talking about the original man, the original woman, the original humanity, Black coming out of Africa.
The Nile River, which we came down, flows from south to north. See, we came down the river. They came up the river. So when we came down in this direction, we looked at this as the bottom. This is the bottom. And see, a lot of the ancient fossils is in the Central East region of Africa, but they left this region and went south before they came down north. You'll find an ancient artifacts in South Africa. So they went south before they came north. And so all these civilizations down here, even India, they got enough nerves to act like they as ancient as Africa. That's a damn lie. That's a damn lie. And we can prove it by they ain't got no artifacts in India, even 500,000 years old. 300,000-400,000. They talking about them people got over there about 50,000. We don't really know. We don't really know, but it's not in comparison at all to what was going on in Africa. And so this is the true view in which you should look at the world. These peoples is at the bottom, and you on the top. And we know that Africa is on top anyway, because this is the hottest region on the planet, which means it has to be directly above the sun. So it got to be at the top. Those continents that are cold are away from the sun. They on the side or the bottom. That's just common sense. Okay? Now, looking at this viewpoint, you're going to see that a lot of our people came, even before they got down to Egypt. They were coming across this ocean, and this is not the Indian Ocean. Okay? You can put whatever damn name in there off of Africa that you want. How the hell the Indian gonna have an ocean? And he stole that land from the nappy-head Buddha. And I'm gonna show you that. You see what I'm saying? And so all of these, see, this is the end of the story. When you start seeing India, Iran, Pakistan, China, you see, this is the end of the story.
Now, this is the first world right here. This is the first world, okay? This is the reason you think it's upside down, but it's not. It's top side up. See, because our people came down the river, okay? We came down the river. So Europe and all Upper Asia is on the bottom to our people. That's why when you read Egyptian history, this is Lower Egypt, and up here is Upper Egypt. This is Lower Sudan, this is Upper Sudan, because they're considering this the top, okay, when you do your research. And so our peoples was I'm gonna deal with the monsoons. You got the moms in India. See, those are those wind currents. And I'm gonna show you the months where it blows towards India, okay? They blowing hard too. So you can bring large commodities during these times, and then for 4 or 5 months, they switch and go back to Africa. So our peoples was coming, this is what you call the Southern Hemisphere. And our peoples was coming across these oceans tens of thousands of years ago. You're coming into Australia, coming into what you call Indonesia, coming into, you know, what they call this Polynesia and all these crazy ass words, just to keep from calling it African people. Okay, this is right side up for the people just can't take it this way. They say, God damn it, I don't want to say it. I know what you're talking about, but in case you need to see it this way, okay? And so again, the monsoons is coming up the Mozambique Channel, and they blowing all through here, what they call the Arabian Sea. And if you put any boat in it, it's gonna land you right into it automatically. And if you come low enough, it'll shoot you up under and come over here into the Bay of Bengal. These are the monsoons, the winds in July, okay? And it's showing you the winds that's blowing all through here, okay? And so these Africans was coming over here a long time ago, family. We talking about the white, we talking about 10,000 years before the white man even showed up. He was always, so this was Kush. So when you hear Nagar, which this is not the land, but I'm gonna show you where it's all throughout the culture, the Twa. And that's where the Twa stay at. The little short, which y'all, what the Western world call pigs. This is where they stay, most of them stay at right now today, the rainforest. They was the first one that gathered the mess. They was there for hundreds of millions of years. This is where they were. And these was the little Twa and the Bushman. Short, tight, curly hair, and they got eyes. And they were the first two over the Chinese. They come out of the, okay? And so the woolly head types was all through this era. Now, you can see the techniques. This is at Angkor Wat, and I'm going there. And that's Angkor. Angkor. You can hear the words. You can hear them. And see, when you look at the technology, this is over thousands of years of development. Just like if anybody in the world want to take architecture, there's only so many schools. Like a skyscraper downtown, there's only so many schools that can teach you how to build skyscrapers. It's the same with this. These people had to go to school to learn how to carve like this. And so what schools was on the planet at that time still teaching people how to carve like that? And you can see right here, this ain't solid. This solid. This guy said, see, they can piece that together. That ain't even solid. You can see the cracks of it. That's not solid. So it's as beautiful as it is. We honor our brothers and sisters in Asia that built that, but it still can't compare to Egypt. Egypt is our greatest performance as a people. When you want to show the greatness of Africa, you take them straight to Egypt. Now you see how you got the colonnades, you got these statues that lead all the way down to the temple. You got this long, and this is almost like the church. It's oblong. You ain't just walk up to the door, you got to walk down what they call the nave. You got to walk down to, and this one road led down to the temple of Karnak. This is the temple of Luxor. So this is 1.5 miles. And these horn packets, which they call sphinxes, is that long. This was the longest grand walkway in the ancient world. And when you come to Angkor Wat, it's aligned the same way. Let me go on this side. Right here, they got the sacred lake. Just like they got the sacred lake. You see right here, but these is Nagars. Okay? But here they got the horn mat. Okay? The horn mat. This is Karnak. And here you see him holding the Nagar. This is divine in Asia. Another thing that you should recognize.
So I don't know if you guys have noticed that I don't care who the scholar is, whether it's a Pan-African, if it's a different religion, they always kind of take it back to the same thing. But we know when they're talking about like Africa, what areas these are. The Asian areas are actually the areas they try to refer to. But when we think about Africa, the African area is actually the area that is the European area or the Euro-Asian area. So these areas all kind of tie into certain or specific, specific things. But I just want you guys to see that there's always some type of affiliation with the ancients, some type of Oriental, Asian, and it always like has some kind of affiliation with Black. They even show you now how, even though we may not agree with some things that were shown in the two videos, it does show you that there's a certain amount of lineage that goes back to the Asian, and they say Black roots, so on and so forth. So just wanted to throw that in there, guys, because I have a video planned at 12:30 GIC, and we will be talking then to disseminate the so-called Black history, which is really European history. All right, guys, have a good one. Talk with you shortly.